The Jenkins lived on a house on the corner of Broker Streets. Not even more than a year ago, Lisa and Tom Jenkins quietly signed the divorce papers, so privately that not even their own children knew until they were put in the custody of their unwilling father. A year later, Anna and David, grades 3rd and 5th respectively, went to the same school, lived in the same house, on the same streets, and nothing seemed to have changed. Until Anna's 4th grade teacher caught a glimpse of the fatal wounds on the 9-year-old's arms. That is when someone began to realize exactly what was happening behind closed doors. Anna and David Jenkins, like so many other kids around the world, were victims of child abuse, or torment that millions of children have faced, terrified to even go to the sanctuary of their own homes. What's different about them, though, was that later, the two of them founded an organization dedicated to help those children in need, and eventually forgave their father. Child abuse is a pressing problem that needs to be addressed effectively. However, in the end, it is up to the child and the parent to work together to solve this problem. Now today I'm going to be talking about 3 main points. First, the widespread scale and scope of child abuse. Second, the lasting physiological impacts it can have on a child. And third, what can we do? So first, what is the range of child abuse? An article by Child Health, the official organization for the prevention and treatment of child abuse, states that every year more than 3 million reports of child abuse are made in the United States, involving up to 6 million children. The United States has been one of the worst records among industrialized nations, losing an average between 4 and 7 children every day to child abuse and neglect. What's more, though, is that 30% of these kids will go on to abuse their own children, continuing a terrible cycle of child abuse. In order to strengthen the bond between parent and child, more communication to authorities and to other parents must be made. However, it is just too easy to ignore this in the present day. And if we don't do this, these 6 million children will be forced to go through this horrible experience their entire life, and maybe pass it on to their own children. Next, child abuse can have lasting physical as well as psychological effects on children. According to an article written by Psychology Today published October 19, 2013, a study conducted by the researchers at UCLA examined the effects of child abuse and corresponding lack of parental affection across the body's entire regulatory system. It found strong links between negative early life experiences and health across the board. The effects permeate one's entire mind-body system. The article goes on to state that loving relationships can even prevent disease risks later in life for individuals, and that there is a direct relationship between abuse and mental health. Angela Goodwin Slater is one of such victims of child abuse. Part of a testimony she published in April of 2013 states, "In the 4th grade, I went to a new school. For the first 4 or 5 months, I was picked on and bullied. When I told my mother, her first response was to ask me, what had I done to get bullied? As I told my mother, as a teenager, I was given the offer to train on the U.S. swimming team for the 1988 World Olympics. I was excited. This was my dream. My mother declined the offer. When I asked her why, she said she didn't have time to waste with that. These events are not as rare as they would appear. My mother would often yell, scream, and put me down. By my early to mid-teens, it was routine. It was part of my day. I did drugs and drank during junior high school. I stopped doing drugs during my late teens, but I started drinking rather heavily." Miss Slater is only one of the victims of child abuse. Throughout her life, she struggled with her self-esteem and began to see therapists at the age of 20. She has been in and out of therapy for the last 25 years. And Miss Slater, now 45, says her biggest struggle is fighting to believe that she is not who her mother painted her out to be, and controlling her own temper with her child, striving to be a different mother than her own. Finally, we are left with the question, What can be done about this terrible predicament? Quite simply put, there are many reasons to there are three main ways to tackle the problem: primary, secondary, and tertiary prevention. Primary prevention focuses on the solutions for general public, such as public awareness, complaints, and public services announcements. Secondary prevention is more focused on the communities where abuse is likely to happen, such as family education programs for lower income communities and parent education programs for high schools with teen mothers. Lastly, tertiary prevention is activities focused on the families where abuse has already taken place, such as intensive family preservation services with mental guidance counselors and parent mentor programs. All this treatment, however, can only be achieved once the problem is cited, and often children feel threatened by parents to actually confide in other people about the problem occurring in their households so naturally that it falls on the adults and other children they interact with, primarily the students' teachers, to determine a few of the several signs of child abuse. What follows is a hasty custody case. Often, the child cannot overcome the situation. That's why it is so important. It is so important for these children to have the courage to change their faith, but this is sadly not the case in most situations. But then, there are truly amazing people who can find a way to take abuse and not let it define their lives, to almost become a better person because of the ordeals they had to face. The people who can actually evolve and change and become more positive without such people through this experience. One of the most well-known accounts of this is the story of Oprah Winfrey, a well-known talk show host and a philanthropist. She herself had been a victim of abuse at a young age and lived in poverty with a dad who was a drug addict. But she did not let this experience define her. All throughout her life, she could have used this as an excuse, but that she had been abused for more than 10 years of her childhood. But not only did she find the courage to break free from the chains that limited her before, she found a way to actually impact others' lives through empathetic knowledge of the predicaments. Abuse is a pressing problem that should be dealt with effectively. However, it is really up to the child to overcome the experience. Anna and David Jenkins are one example of children that did not let child abuse shape their lives. Oftentimes, it can be easy to feel pity for oneself because of disabilities or burdens that one might have to carry. These occurrences can have lasting impacts on a child's life, but it is really up to the child whether or not they want to sit and sulk for the rest of their lives or really let go of the anger and let it shape them into a better person. Yet, we sit here, listening to the statistics and numbers and diseases that really define us, when our real focus should be to learn from our mistakes and not let our anger build up. Because when one harbors anger for a person, that person still has control of us. We are the masters of our own destinies and the controllers of our own fate. And we cannot let others control us or put us down. Thank you.